Here now is Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells with Talk to Tom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk to Tom. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells from the powerful WKMG News 6 right here in Orlando, Florida. This show is a big dream come true for me. It started out in 2004. It's just me talking to you before social media. We'd put viewers on. I'd answer the questions live on TV. Then I took it to Facebook for a while, just answering questions as I was doing radio. And then about, when was that? December or so, November. We decided to put it on every 5:30 Thursday afternoons right here on WKMG and anytime on News 6 Plus. So what this does is it gives you, the viewer, a chance to ask me questions. Later in this program, we're going to talk to some fine folks over in Lake County about Florida's citrus industry and how it's doing and what they do when the weather takes a turn for the worse. We're going to talk to one local farmer about how they protected their crops back in December from all the cold weather. But first, we're going to answer some questions from you, the viewer at home. Our first question comes from Kelvin.
Hey, Tom. My name is Kelvin Hampton. I just moved here from Columbus, Ohio. I left Ohio to get away from the cold. So how am I in Florida and it's still cold, Tom? Help me with this question, please. Thank you very much.
Look at Kelvin, the Buckeye, a man after my own heart. Did you notice he had on the big puffy jacket, the big one? You can always tell how long someone's lived in Central Florida by how old their winter clothes are. Kelvin obviously just moved here. His puffy jacket is trendy, on point. Great looking coat, Kelvin. Here's the bottom line, my man. Don't let go of that coat because it does get cold here in Central Florida from time to time. We are not truly a tropical climate. We are what is known as a subtropical climate. So from time to time, those cold Arctic cold fronts do make it all the way down here. They can be brutal. We do have freezes. We have overnight lows that do drop into the teens. Not often. It's rare. And most especially rare now with what has become climate change, our ever-changing climate. But we do drop below freezing. We did in December. Some of you to the north will again soon. So the bottom line is it gets cold. We get cold fronts. People don't think of Florida as being cold, but from time to time, we do get cold here. So Kelvin, bottom line, great jacket. Thank you for coming to Central Florida. Here's a quick stat for you. More people moved to Central Florida from Ohio than any other state. Did you know that? Now you can't forget it. I did not move here from Ohio, but I did study meteorology at The Ohio State University. Then I went to Detroit, then Central Florida for the last quarter of a century. And I'm never leaving. And Kelvin, I've got a feeling you won't leave either. All right. Enough about that. It does get cold here from time to time, but it does not last. Let's ask now the new question from our friend Anthony. Anthony, are you there?
My name's Anthony. My question for you, Tom, is what do you think the weather's going to be like 10 years from now?
Oh, okay, Anthony, that's kind of a loaded question. The weather 10 years from now. And I don't know what you mean by that. I think you mean what the climate locally is going to be 10 years from now. And there's a lot to unpack with that. Basically, we're in a period of change. And I believe that in 10 years, you're going to be astounded by the wild swings that we're just now getting used to between deep fires in the west, followed by big floods in the west, followed by warming conditions here in Central Florida and warming all across the southeast and much of America. I think you're going to be taken aback by the weirdness. It's not just the global change, the climate change or global warming. It's the weirdness that's going to freak you out. And what I mean by that is the fact that it'll be really, really weird in that we don't get cool at night anymore. That's going to be weird for you. Much of our warming that we've been experiencing has been the increase of temperatures during the overnights. Our normal overnight lows would drop down into the 60s in the summertime. They're stopping in the 70s, upper 70s, or sometimes at night we don't get below 79, sometimes close to 80. So all of a sudden you're talking about warm overnight lows, making a big difference. That's going to be weird for you. Give it another 10 years from now, and I think that precipitation normals are going to be weird because we get more torrential rainfall when we do get rain. And I think that the dry season is going to be strange and that it stays super dry for maybe a little longer. Maybe our dry season switches and we don't start getting the rain in May. We start picking up the rain in June, and then we get it in buckets, much like we do with our tropical events now. Not only are they big wind makers, the wind's not really increasing overall, but the damage from the water, much like we had with Ian last year, it becomes a huge, huge issue. How much moisture is falling from the sky. So I think in 10 years from now, it'll be more of the same. We're taking steps now to change that. If you pay attention to forecasting change every week here on WKMG and in our weather newsletter, you know I address this issue from time to time. We talk about something, forecasting change every week, but from time to time we'll talk about steps to mitigate the changes. And I think that in the future, if we don't get our changes just right, it'll continue. And I think for 10 years from now, we'll still be dealing with this. We can fix it over 30 years and 50 years, probably not in 10. Even with carbon capture, which I think is going to be one of the big issues in the future to creating or correcting climate change, I still think 10 years from now we're going to be hotter and a whole lot wetter than we are today with more wild swings. A long answer, but that's my bottom line. All right, let's move along to our third question. This should be the final one from you, the viewer. This one comes to us from our friend, Jose. Hey, Jose, what's up?
Hey Tom, my name is Jose and I have a question about the weather. How can it affect people emotionally and how it can affect them, mentally?
Okay, Jose, that's a great question. I think the weather does play a big factor in how some people feel. It's not for everyone, but a lot of people do get affected by the weather physically, mentally, and emotionally. And if you talk to the average person who has moved here, and that's about I'd have to break it down some other way. I'm not sure I could give you the exact stats, but it used to be a couple of, probably 10 or 15 years ago, the stat was we turned over about 23 to 25% of our people every year. So many people were moving here, and then part of them would move halfway back. We call them halfbacks. They moved out from New York, Jersey, Michigan, Ohio, and they didn't like it, and a quarter of them would move a little farther back. But we would net 75% more people all the time out of that group moving down. I think if you talk to them, and this is unscientific, but if you talk to them, I think part of the reason they loved it here was because we have more sunshine. If you go back to a place, and this is, again, autobiographical, like our guy Kelvin earlier, if you moved here from Ohio, then the difference between the gray skies of Ohio and the sunny skies of Central Florida will blow you away. A lot of people move here from the grayest places in the country, Jersey, New York, Michigan, Ohio, even Indiana. You come down here to the south and all of a sudden it's like, wow, it seems like it's sunny all the time. So it does affect people's moods. It affects their well-being. It affects their attitudes. Not being cold affects a lot. It also affects your health in that when you're outside, you're able to do more. Like up north in the wintertime, you spend 6 or 7 months inside, unable to get outside. You don't walk far. You don't see your neighbors and you don't socialize. You get down here where it's sunny and all of a sudden you're outside a lot more. You work out more. You are more athletic and you're in better health. Now, if you can stay away from the skin cancer and the lightning strikes, chances are you're going to start to live a lot longer. I would like to see a study sometime on longevity on people who live in areas that get more sun than areas that stay dark. And I can say from a personal basis, the sunshine makes me happy. And the years that I spent in the Midwest, where the people were great, that being cloudy all the time was awful. So the sunshine does affect you emotionally. It does affect you mentally. And stepping outside in the sunshine, putting on the sunglasses is a great feeling in the dead of what would be the Arctic winter in December, January, and February. I love it, love it, love it. I think obviously you do too. And there's a quote that I say all the time to my friends back up north when they're considering coming down on vacation or the move. I always say, hey, life is better under the palm. So for you, Jose, I would say life is better in the sunshine. All right, we're going to wrap it up. We're running out of time here on Talk to Tom. Thank you for your questions. Anytime you want to submit a question to me, just head to clickorlando.com/talk to Tom. Coming up after the break, we're talking to the Showcase of Citrus in Clermont.
John Arnold created the Showcase of Citrus in 1989, and so we're on our 33 year.
Hear how they protect their fruit from the cold during the winter to make sure you have orange juice and fresh fruit all year long.
If it gets to about 25 degrees or lower for a few hours, all the liquid inside the fruit will freeze, and then you have a damaged crop. Luckily, we were only at about 27 degrees, and it wasn't for very long. And the fruit this year is actually really good.
Hello, everyone, again, and welcome back to Talk to Tom. Thanks for staying with us. Earlier in the show, we answered your weather questions, which is some of my favorite stuff to do. Right now, we want to step outside and turn to a conversation about Florida's citrus industry. One of the biggest things that ever happened to the Southeast was the citrus industry in Florida. It's still super important here now, too. Every time it turns colder, the farmers have to protect their crops during the winter. So, ahead of the Christmas showcase of citrus in Clermont, they were preparing for the hard freeze, and luckily it looks as though they've made it through. But the season is far from over. We're being joined now by our friend Tara Boshell. Tara joins us to talk about the showcase of citrus. How are you doing, my friend?
I am good. Thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing well. It looks like you're standing right in the middle of a big citrus grove. What are those oranges behind you?
I am in the middle of the orange grove, and these are this year's Hamlins. I am in the middle of a 2,500 acre working citrus and cattle ranch.
There are, as I drive around Central Florida, I normally go, wow, there's just not much left. We'll talk about that a little later in this interview. But I want to start out by asking the first question of the day. How did you guys actually fare during the cold temps in December? It got bad.
It did. It got bad, but luckily everything is fine. We got to about 27 degrees both nights. It was Christmas Eve. It was, I think, the 27th and 25th, 26th, 27th, something like that. And when you have temperatures below 32, obviously we start to worry. We have to protect our trees, protect the crop, and the time frame just kind of becomes one big blur because we are up, 24/7. Making sure that the crop for the season is going to be okay. But we did well.
I was looking at them right there. Those look really healthy. So they obviously, whatever you did worked, right? They look great. Makes you want to go out there and pick them. Hey, talk to me about what you do. How do you prepare? I mean, we've all seen video in the past or film in the past of, and we all think we know what you do. Like you spray them down and ice them. Do you ash pot? Do you ice? What's the technique? What are you doing these days?
So these days we focus on the base of the trunk of the tree because that's the heart of it. If the upper parts of the tree, and these are somewhat larger trees. We've probably got 15 foot or so. And if the top part of the tree doesn't make it, at least we have the trunk. So we will run irrigation inside the tree, and on smaller trees, it will spray onto the young leaves. But we irrigate, and we use. On this ranch, we're able to use our lake water. So it's inherently at a warmer temperature, and spraying the water onto the trunk, it will actually insulate it. So when we get to about 35 degrees and we know, or we're expecting temperatures below 32, that's when we're going to start the irrigation process. It's usually around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, midnight. At least it was for this past freeze. And we were in the 20s at probably around 7, 8 o'clock those 2 mornings. And these poor trees, they've gone through two hurricanes and 2 nights of freezes within the past few months. And they're hanging in there, though.
Okay, well, talk to me about the age of that tree. When I look at that tree doesn't look, I have no way of knowing if it's like 30 years old or 3 years old.
This right behind me, it's probably about 20 years old.
Oh, really?
I did post some pictures on our Facebook of trees that were about 3 to 5 years old, and they're obviously smaller, but they're the ones that I captured encased with ice. There's some pretty beautiful images, but yet it's a little it's scary at the same time because what you're doing is you're freezing it intentionally to protect it. But these trees they did well. They have defoliated some. They're not as green as we would like them to be because of all the weather issues that they've experienced. But the crop is great. We worry about citrus freezing when it gets to about 25 degrees or below for a few hours at a time. Thankfully,
I'm sorry, say that again. You worry about what? For how long? You get below.
So let me grab an orange.
Okay, go ahead.
So if the oranges during the freeze if it gets to about 25 degrees or lower for a few hours, all the liquid inside the fruit will freeze, and then you have a damaged crop. Luckily, we were only at about 27 degrees, and it wasn't for very long, and the fruit this year is actually really good.
Okay, talk to me about how long you've been around. Obviously, you just said we've survived some stuff and a couple of hurricanes in this year, but how long has the Showcase of Citrus been around?
So John Arnold created the Showcase of Citrus in 1989, and so we're on our 33 year. These trees are about 20 years old, but we do have some that are older and some that are younger. As with farming, there's always a time where you have to reset, and the trees aren't going to produce as well as they used to. These trees right now, these are Hamlins, and they are on a rootstock, so they were grafted, and they've been producing well for almost 2 decades.
Well, let's go back to the weather obstacles you faced. If you've been there since 1989, I know for a fact there was a huge freeze in 89. Did he start this Showcase of Citrus after that freeze? Okay.
So luckily he was able to start all over in 89.
Okay.
We have some trees that are on a different part of the property that were planted in 89 after the freeze, and they're still producing. We do take care of them. We obviously try to stay as organic, natural as possible. We have to fertilize a lot because the soil is sandy and the trees need nutrients, but this area only used to be citrus, and now it's a lot of houses.
Yeah, I tell people all the time that old Tom Petty song about Southern accents when he sings, "Think I might go work Orlando if them orange groves don't freeze." Yeah, when I moved down here, 23 years ago, I was like, oh, there's going to be orange groves everywhere. And my neighborhood was built in an old grapefruit grove. But as you drive around southwest Orange County, there just aren't many citrus groves left. So that brings us to the big question here. What's the future? Obviously, you're in Clermont, you said, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're in Lake County. Yes. You're in Lake County. Yes. What's it? I've driven through there a bunch, so I know there's not many left in Lake County either. You have to go even farther south. So what's the future of your industry? Where are we going with this? Is it going to make a little bit of a comeback? You think this is what we have is what we get, or what changes do you see? Open-ended question. Just explain to us what you think.
There's so much to that question. We, as a family-owned and operated ranch farm, we want it to continue. We're doing our best. We're not in the business to sell. This is the future for generations. John is 3rd generation. We have our kids. They're the 4th generation. It's important that in our minds that we keep this going. A lot of groves have gone away, to housing. Mm-hmm. It's, I want to say, more lucrative right now. There's a big push for houses and land, and working a farm is not an easy job. When we had the freezes the other day, you can sit back and do everything you can to protect what your interest is in it, but that one night you could lose your entire crop. So diversification is a major factor when you are a farmer, because it's almost like an all or none situation, and you don't want to rely on just one aspect and lose your earnings, like what happened in 89. And then there was some in the 50s, deep freeze in the 50s, and I think in the 20s there were some. Yeah,
and even as recently as when was that? Like 93, 92, 89? Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
I remember it cold.
Tough ones. Yeah. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up and let you get back to doing what it is you do out there. This was a great shot. That's a beautiful orange tree. You were awesome. Thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to us. We really appreciate it. This was our friend Tara Boshell from the fine folks of the Showcase of Citrus over in Lake County. Tara, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye now. All right, and thank you for joining us and watching Talk to Tom. We can't thank you enough for being here. You can submit your weather-related questions at clickorlando.com/talk to Tom, and always watch us anytime on News 6 Plus.